Poor soul, the centre of my sinful earth, these rebel powers that thee array, why dost thou pine within and suffer dearth, painting thy outward worlds so costly gay? Hello everyone, welcome back to Learn with Nowrin. Today we are going to discuss Sonnet 146 by William Shakespeare. We will be discussing the sonnet into two sequels. That means first of all we will discuss the summary and then the analysis of the poem. So we all know that Sonnet 146 is best known for its deeply introspective, quasi-religious philosophizing style hardly found elsewhere in the sonnet sequence of William Shakespeare. Though it belongs to the Dark Lady series, the narrator addresses not to the Dark Lady but rather his own endangered soul. In a departure from the discussion of his mistress, the speaker addresses his own soul. There he asks his soul, which resides inside his sinful body, why it suffers and endures misery within his body, why his soul allows his exterior vanity to own his interior life, why his soul as a lord of his body spends so much of its time seeking earthly desires when it should be most concerned about ensuring its immortality. He could live a more spiritual life by starving the body and feeding the soul. That way, the speaker reasons, the soul would have eternal life and defeat death. Let's begin with a poem. The poet begins the sonnet with a metaphor, poor soul, the center of my sinful earth. Here the earth stands for the body, the instrument and the bearer of sin within which the soul is kept captive. Then in the second line, these rebel powers that array, the speaker asks to the soul, why is it afflicted by the passion and desire of the body? Then comes, why dost thou pine within and suffer death, painting thy outward walls so costly gay? In the line 3 and 4, the speaker is asking his soul, why does it suffer inwardly but spend so much efforts and time on its outward appearance? Here the word pine means to lose health or flesh as through grief, or to yearn intensely and persistently, especially for something unattainable. And the word dearth means deficiency or lack of something, especially famine. The outward worlds refers to our body, thus painting thy outward worlds means decorating the human body, outward body, that is the place of living for the soul in this earth. In the second stanza, the metaphor is a bit extended. In the first two lines of the second stanza, the poet says, why so large cost, having so short a lease, dost thou upon thy fading mansion spend? That means in line 5 and 6, the speaker is asking why the soul is investing so much on a body that is temporary. Here the fading mansion is referred to human body, which is human life, that is continuously fading and moving forward to death. The first 6 lines contain a conceit of castle under siege, in which the soul is portrayed as being besieged by rebel powers. The desire of the body, which will not be governed by the soul. Human body is the resting place for soul while visiting the earth. Thus, soul will rest only for a shorter period of time here. So, the speaker is asking the soul why it allows itself wasting away inside its expensively decorated castle walls, that is, our body. He then asks, what is the point of spending so much on a decaying mansion, that refers to human body also, on which the soul will stay for a short period of time? In lines 7 and 8, the poet says, shall worms inherit of his excess eat up thy charge? Is this thy body's end? Here the speaker is saying that what the soul is doing is of total waste, because the earthly body will return to earth after death, and worms will eat up the body. That is why the speaker is saying the expenditure of the soul for its body is an excess. Most of the metaphors of the last 8 lines deal with eating and feeding. In line 7, we have already noticed that the speaker makes the point clear that all the money and focus on the body, which is mortal, which is temporary, will go only to feed worms. In the 8th line, then, the speaker is asking rhetorically to the soul that, is that the purpose of the body? Then, soul, leave thou upon thy servant's loss, and let that pine to aggravate thy store, by terms divine in selling hours of dross, within be fed, without be rich no more. In the line 9, the volta, then soul, leads to the solution. Ignore the body and feed the soul. He calls the body the servant of the soul in line 9 and urges the soul to let the body waste away in order to aggravate thy store or increase the soul's spiritual richness. In line 11, he tells the soul to buy terms divine, which suggest acquiring eternal life by selling hours of dross, which refers to the concerns of the flesh. Here the word dross means the waste matter produced during the smelting process, represents the body here, while the good metal represents the soul. The speaker urges the soul to gain time in eternity by ridding itself of worthless material thing, to feed the inner spirit rather than focusing on the outer appearance of the body. In this way, the soul will feed on death, which feeds on man. That means soul will achieve triumph over death, which always take away life, thus soul out of the body. And once death is dead, there will be no more dying. This is the final stroke. In the last line, the poet says, so shalt thou feed on death that feeds on man, and death once dead, there is no more dying then. That means in the final concluding couplet, the speaker is saying, by using the word death twice, like here it is saying that death once dead. That means death is dying. So the soul is overpowering death. That means the soul has a triumph over the death, and the speaker here points out the eternal life of our soul. There is no more dying then refers to that soul becomes eternal. That means if the soul solely concentrate on its own beautification, that is to purify itself, it will be eternal. Sonnet 146, in its serious tone and spiritual message, is a departure from most of the other sonnets by William Shakespeare. It is undoubtedly moralizing, self-exaltation to privilege the inner enrichment of our soul over the outer decoration of the body. The way the poem is printed in its first edition, its first 2 lines, like, poor soul, the center of my sinful earth, these rebel powers that thee array. The repetition of the phrase, my sinful earth, at the beginning of the second line has long been chalked up to a printer's mistake. It almost certainly could not have been Shakespeare's intention to break his meter so egolessly for the sake of such a heavy-handed repetition. As a result, critics have debated over, for what seems to better part for 4 centuries, over what the missing text might have been. They have guessed trapped in the place of the repetition. We can say trapped by these rebel powers of array. It is addressed neither to the fair youth nor to the dark lady, but to the speaker's own soul, as he urges himself to lead a more spiritual life as he ages. The sonnet is a Petrarchan in structure, we can say, in the description, not in the form. The octave describes the problem of focusing too much on the needs of the body, and in the sestate it makes the case for attending to the needs of the soul. The sonnet deals with a common dichotomy in Elizabethan poetry, the body versus the soul. The first line addresses the soul as the center of my sinful earth, The term earth in Elizabethan poetry is often used to refer to the human body. Like the human body is made up of earth and will go back to earth in the graveyard after the death. Adam in the Bible is made from the earth or the dust, and all humans return to the earth when they die. The dichotomy between heaven and earth, between God and humans, is thought to be contained in every human being. Each person has a heavenly part, a soul, and an earthly part, a body. The soul, which comes from God, tends to be more pure, but is often weighted down and corrupted by the body itself, which, being of the earth, is prone to sin. Only by enriching the soul itself can the soul be freed from its bounds and achieve immortality. It is as though the soul has a debt to pay off before it may escape death's eternal doom. And as such, the narrator compels his soul to buy terms divine in selling hours of dross in order to set itself free. Then comes the final stroke, the concluding couplet. Line 13 contains a logical syllogism, which is major and minor premise followed by a conclusion that argues when the soul feeds on the death of the body, the soul will therefore feed on and defeat death. That means when the soul will be able to change his mindset from the body towards itself, it will overpower death and it will be triumphant over death. It will defeat death. The logical conclusion in the final line, we see that, and death once dead, there is no more dying then. That means when the soul will be able to defeat death, then there will be no more dying for the soul itself. The final line we see brings to mind the last line of English poet John Donne's Sonnet 10, Death, thou shalt die. That means when the death is defeated, the soul will have an eternal life.